Imagine walking through your city on a normal winter afternoon, when the ground suddenly shakes beneath your feet. You hear a sound like a machine gun burst, then a thunderous roar. You turn your head, and a 40-foot wall of dark, boiling molasses is racing toward you at over 35 miles per hour. It tears buildings from their foundations, crushes steel like paper, and traps anyone it touches. This isn't a scene from a movie. This happened in Boston. And for the next few minutes, you'll discover how a simple tank of syrup unleashed one of the strangest and deadliest disasters in American history. Did you know that one of the strangest and deadliest disasters in American history wasn't caused by fire, war, or weather, but by a massive wave of molasses? It sounds unbelievable, almost like a joke. But on a cold January day in 1919, a quiet Boston neighborhood was hit by a 25-foot wall of sticky, dark syrup moving faster than a horse. And in less than 90 seconds, it turned a normal day into chaos, tragedy, and one of the most unexpected engineering failures in history. On that winter morning, Boston's North End was alive with the usual sounds of city life. Children chased each other near the waterfront. Horses dragged heavy carts down narrow streets. Workers moved between factories and warehouses as a cold wind whipped through the alleys. The neighborhood was home to immigrants, laborers, and families living shoulder to shoulder with the booming industries that powered America's economy after World War I. In the middle of that neighborhood stood a massive steel tank. Nearly 50 feet tall, 90 feet wide, and filled with over 2 million gallons of molasses. To the company that owned it, the tank was money. Molasses was used for rum, for livestock feed. And during the war, it had been crucial for making industrial alcohol for weapons and ammunition. Speed mattered, pressure mattered, and safety was an afterthought. Residents often complained about the tank. They said it groaned, it leaked. Brown streaks ran down its sides. Workers joked that kids could dip their bread in the molasses dripping from the seams. But the company brushed off every concern. They rushed construction, skipped proper testing, and did whatever it took to keep production going. By January 15, 1919, the temperature had swung suddenly. Days of freezing cold were followed by a quick warm-up, and inside the tank the molasses began to ferment. It expanded, it heated. Pressure built against steel plates that were already too thin and poorly installed. No one nearby knew the danger, but many noticed the sounds. People walking past the tank heard strange pops, sharp cracks, a rattling that didn't feel right. At a nearby firehouse, a man named George Lay paused as he heard what he later described as a machine gun burst. Rapid shots of noise and then a roar. At 12:40 p.m., the tank exploded. The sound was so violent that people miles away thought a bomb had gone off. Iron plates ripped open like paper. Rivets shot through the air like bullets. And then came the wave. A massive wall of molasses, 25 feet high and moving at more than 35 miles per hour, burst into the streets with the force of a freight train. Imagine something heavier than water, thicker than tar, and nearly impossible to escape. That wave hit everything in its path. Horses were swallowed instantly. Wagons flipped over like toys. Building walls shattered. Entire homes were ripped from their foundations. The elevated train tracks twisted and collapsed. Eyewitnesses said it looked alive, rolling and heaving as it tore through the neighborhood. People tried to run but were caught in seconds. The molasses wrapped around their legs, pulled them down, pinned them to debris, and made it almost impossible to breathe. Anyone who fell face first was trapped. Many suffocated before rescuers could reach them. Firefighters and police rushed in, but they moved slowly, every step a struggle. Boots stuck in the thick syrup. Hoses sank into the mess. Survivors cried out from under collapsed buildings and flooded basements. The sound haunted rescuers for years. Some people were found trapped in molasses so thick and hardened by the cold that responders had to chop or cut through it to reach them. As night fell, soldiers, sailors, and neighbors lit lanterns and continued digging. They worked for hours in bitter cold, knowing lives depended on every minute. When the search finally ended, 21 people were dead. More than 150 were injured. The neighborhood looked like a battlefield covered in a brown blanket of destruction. Cleaning the city took months. Workers pumped seawater from the harbor onto the streets. They spread sand and sawdust to soak up the goo. Even after the streets cleared, the molasses lingered everywhere. On hot summer days, people swore the smell returned with the wind. Clothing stuck to furniture. Cars carried traces of it throughout Boston for years. But the true aftermath played out in the courtroom. Families demanded answers, and for the first time in American history, ordinary citizens won a major industrial lawsuit against a powerful company. Investigators discovered the truth. The tank had been built with steel too thin to safely hold its load. The metal was brittle. The rivets were weak. The company ignored every warning sign because fixing the tank cost money and time. The trial lasted 5 years. Engineers explained how the tank should never have been filled. Experts showed that cracks had appeared from the moment it was first constructed. Workers testified that the tank groaned every time it was loaded. One engineer revealed that the steel used was half as thick as engineering standards required. The judgment was clear. The company was responsible. They were ordered to compensate victims and families, and the case set a new standard for industrial safety. After this disaster, companies could no longer build massive structures without proper oversight. Engineering inspections, safety regulations, and accountability became part of modern law. Today, the North End is peaceful. The tank is gone. A quiet park stands where the wave began, with a small plaque telling the story. Most people walking by never imagine the chaos that once ripped through those streets. But the lesson remains. Disasters don't always come from storms or earthquakes. Sometimes they come from neglect, from cutting corners, from warning signs brushed aside. The Great Boston Molasses Flood is more than a strange piece of trivia. It's a reminder that every system, every structure, every decision comes with responsibility. And when that responsibility is ignored, the consequences can be unimaginable. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more forgotten events that shaped history, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and check the description to download a full timeline and infographic of this event.